Welcome to Conversations in IR. My name is Cristian Nitoiu from the Center for Foreign Policy and Security Studies of University of Craiova. Our guest today is Igor Istomin, who is a senior lecturer at MGIMO University in Moscow. Today we're going to focus on multilateralism and the multipolar world and how various changes in the world order are affecting multipolarity. My first question for you, Igor, is whether you think we have moved into a multipolar world.
Many of our colleagues in Russia definitely think so. But I also know that I also think that there is an ongoing debate. What is the multipolar world? Whether we are moving in that direction or we are already there, or there are some alternatives to this scenario. I think what we can say for sure that today we have much more great power competition, and that we are in the world of the great power competition once again. We haven't seen that much of it in the last 2 decades, but if you look now at the political rhetoric, if you look now at the patterns of military spending, if you look at the level of conflict on regional conflicts, local conflicts in which great powers are engaged, then you will see that we are definitely having more of that. And of course this creates certain risks for international security. So we should be aware and prepared for problematic relations between great powers in the forthcoming future.
Thank you, Igor. That's very interesting. Seeing that you're coming from Russia and you have a lot of expertise on Russian foreign policy, can you also tell us a bit about what would be Russia's role in this new multipolar world?
Well, I see Russia as part of this big picture that I've mentioned. So, and I think the most important thing for Russia today is to try to be out on the outskirts of this process of great power competition that we see today. And unfortunately, Russia is now at the centerpiece of this process. Sometimes it is because of its own moves. To some extent, it is because of the actions and reactions of other players. And I think that Russia would like be more less involved in these processes. And more focused on on its own development. We have the famous phrase of the 19th century Russian Foreign Minister Gorchakov: "Russia is concentrating itself," and this is the position that Russia needs today. But unfortunately, the events are going in the other direction. I think that if the rise of China continues at the same pace, and we will have the same concerns within the United States regarding this process, it could change in the other direction, so that they will have more focus on the Chinese-American tensions, and then Russia will be able to escape its now centric position. Of course, it brings certain reputational benefits for it. And for example, its actions in Syria created not only a much of concerns in the West, but if you look across the region, there is a much more interest in cooperating with Russia because it is seen as a credible player. So Russia is in a complex position in a more complex world, and I think that there are interest in Russia to somehow adjust its position in regards to where we are today.
A lot of our debates have focused on great powers rather than small states when talking about multipolarity. So I would be very interested to hear whether or not you have some advice for small states. How should they adapt to multipolarity? And seeing that we're here in Romania, which is obviously an example of small state, would you have any advice for Romania from that perspective?
Well, I don't feel myself so much self-confident to give advices to Romanian government, but I would say that in general, I think with the multipolarity, what you have is greater degrees of freedom for the small and medium powers and regional powers, and you need to use it wisely. So it creates certain opportunities because you could engage in all kinds of hedging between the major powers. You could engage in some kind of trying to play on the differences from time to time. But if you overplay that, if you create too much disagreement over yourself between the major powers, you are in the very bad position, and there are huge risks that you will be torn apart. And this will create a lot of problems for the major powers themselves. They will lose from this. But at the same time, you don't want to be in the centerpiece of this confrontation even more. So I think that it is a more challenging position for the decision makers, for the government bureaucracies. You need much more competence to operate in this world. But at the same time, you could have benefits. You could get benefits from this process of competition if you play wisely, and if you know what your priorities, economic priorities, security priorities, and you do not mix what you want for yourself with the specific maybe institutional arrangements or specific ways how you achieve that.
Many analysts believe that President Trump is having some sort of negative effect on American leadership in the world. Can you tell us a bit about what you think Trump's actual effect on the liberal world order is?
I think when we talk about liberal world order, what we are talking about, the primary pillar of the current international liberal world order is economic order, and the current pillar of the economic order is the free trade principle, is liberalization of trade and liberalization of economic activities. And if you look in historical perspective, this was something which was promoted by the United States, primarily because it was in the interest of the US companies and the US corporations to open new markets for itself. Now, from the early 2000s, I think, or somewhere in that decade, in the previous decade, we faced the reverse of benefits and risks for the United States from this process. We see that other states, primarily China, India, other developing states, are getting more profits from the free trade and from the liberal world order. So I think it's not the Trump himself, which is he's kind of a symptom rather than a real issue. The real issue is that the United States are searching for the ways how to adjust the rules of the game so that they will be more profitable for themselves. And this was the case for the Obama administration when he introduced like Trans-Pacific Partnership, Trans-Atlantic Investment and Trade and Investment Partnership. So the United States were trying to find the new ways how to make it more, the liberal world order more profitable for them. And at some point there is an idea that maybe to make it profitable you need to get rid of the word liberal when we talk about orders. So I don't think it's kind of symptomatic, it's just related to one person. And maybe Trump is not finding the best solutions to the problems that the United States have. But he is just trying in another way to address the same issues that were trying the previous American administrations. So the question how much he is competent, now it's very debatable, both in the United States and across the world. But if we look at this, I think we also maybe need to be more cautious about getting the final kind of answers to this kind of question, to what extent his approach will be resultive. So far, I think the main problem is that the United States within itself cannot agree on anything today, and there is a great opposition between the president and different fractions in the Congress. So the fact that the United States cannot act decisively, this is an important problem for them. and I think it's broader than just the personality of Mr. Trump, although he's a big personality.